Hi, I'm Billy, one of the Fuji guys, here to give you a quick look at the X Pro1's top feature. Of course, this camera is an exciting camera for us, so this video is going to show you some of the key features and functions of this camera, including its manual controls ability as well as ability to shoot things like full HD video. So let's just take a look at some of the cool features of the X Pro1. In order to enable the raw shooting on the camera, you can go into the menu system by pushing the menu OK button and selecting the image quality. And currently right now it's on fine, which means it's on a JPEG fine compression. You have several options: normal JPEG, then you have fine JPEG with raw shooting, and normal JPEG with raw shooting, or just raw shooting in itself. So I'm just going to select raw shooting for now, and you push OK to do that. And now all the other settings get grayed out because again you're shooting in raw. Just going to tap the button halfway down, and to take a shot, of course, it's like anything else. You just push the shutter button and it captures the images. It's going to store that file as raw. On playback, of course, I can still see a quick preview of it. In order to convert that file now to a JPEG, I go into the menu by pushing the menu OK button. And the first option is, of course, raw conversion. So I'm going to select that, and I can do different things. I can reflect the shooting conditions that I have the camera set to in terms of the exposure, compensation, white balance setting at the time of shooting. I can also do things like push pull, which allows me to under or overexpose it by up to 2 stops, actually up to 3 stops. And this is great sometimes when you want to maybe do a dynamic range, high dynamic range shot where you can under and overexpose a picture. You also have the dynamic range option. You have a film simulation options in terms of Velvia, sepia, whatnot. So I'm just going to do this as maybe a monochrome red filter, make it a black and white image. I can adjust the white balance to what I want. And I'm going to just select, fine sunny day. I can do different shift. I can do color. I can increase the sharpness, do it hard, highlight tones, shadow tones, noise reduction, whatnot. And what I'm happy with is I push the Q button and it then processes that raw file into a JPEG. In addition, of course, the camera still saves the raw file and it leaves it alone, plus you have that additional JPEG image now. So that's just a quick look at the raw and JPEG shooting on the X Pro1. This is the new Q menu or quick menu for the X Pro1. Again, pushing the Q menu gives you quick access to some of the most commonly used photographic settings like ISO controls, dynamic range, white balance, even the type of film simulation, the image quality, image size, noise reduction, highlight tones, shadow tones, color, sharpness, LCD brightness, flash modes, and whatnot. As you can see here, I can actually go to the ISO and using the command dial, adjust the different settings. It even has auto ISO options now on the menu itself. So it's a quick access, so you actually don't have to go into the menu system of the camera. Again, changing dynamic range, I can rotate that here. I can change whether it's shooting normal, raw and JPEGs, or just raw itself, as you can see there. And what's great is that this is the basic screen, but I can change it to custom settings for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 7, and set up all my different settings with the custom settings. I can just rotate to that one if I know that's perfect for studios, so I'm ready to take pictures. Again, this is a lovely feature to have on this camera, which is the Q button. To shoot in the panoramic mode, you push the drive button. You then scroll down with the menu buttons here until you see the panoramic mode, motion panorama. Push OK. You can change the different angles from medium to large. I'm just going to use medium for now. You can also change the direction, so you can pan up and down and up, left to right, right to left. I'm just going to select it so it's from left to right. It makes it a little easier for me. And basically you start by pushing the shutter button halfway to kind of pre-focus on what you want, and then push all the way down to take the shot, and then just slowly pan across. There is a yellow line that kind of helps you to level your shot. There we go. And if it does it properly, it doesn't come with an arrow, you can play back that now. Here's just a quick look at the panoramic image that I've shot. You can push it down to play that back again. Once you set the focus, of course, anything in the background foreground then becomes out of focus. So sometimes you want to change the aperture so that it's a little bit more, you get everything more in focus, and then it's great again for doing landscape shots like that. So quick look at the X Pro1's motion panoramic mode. Here's a quick look at the new menu display on the X Pro1. So pushing the menu OK button now, what's new this time is that we have 5 different tabs for shooting and 3 different tabs for the setup. So before we had to scroll down to multiple pages, as you can see, just to get to a setting Now what you can do is actually push to the left to jump over to the tabs, and now you have 5 different shooting tabs so that it's quick to change if you wanted to change that. In addition, you also have 3 different setup tabs as well. So no longer is just one tab where you have to scroll over and then scroll through multiple pages to get to that. So that's a new addition to the X Pro1. To enable the high-speed continuous shooting mode on the X Pro1, you just push the drive button. It brings you up to this menu. You can use the directional pads to select the continuous shooting mode. You got 6 frames per second or 3 frames per second. I'm going to select 6 frames per second. You push OK on that. And basically, you're just going to push the button halfway down to pre-focus and push the button all the way down. And it fires shots up to 6 frames per second. Once it hits the buffer point, it then slows down slightly, but it continues to shoot. You can then let go, and it will store those images. It stores the images into a buffer, and I can continue to shoot more pictures again, and then stop, and then again do that. And of course, the faster the memory card you have, the faster it's going to write to the card, so it allows you to take quicker shots. Looking back at the image, you push the playback button on the camera. Once you do that, of course, it actually bundles all the images into this little screen here. You can push down, and now you can go through the shots that you've just taken in terms of high speed in that sense, and you can push back to get out of that. Here's a quick look at the function button again, very similar to the X100. Pushing the function button will allow you to quickly change settings like ISO or other customizable settings that you can set it up to do. For instance, if you hold down the function button for a few seconds, the screen will automatically come up, and then now you can adjust what the function button does, whether it's in quick access to the video mode or quick access to change things like the autofocus or white balance. I think most people will leave it on the ISO control because that's tendency to be the one that's used the most on this style camera, especially the X100. In order to enable the auto bracketing mode, you go and push the drive button on the back of the camera, and as you scroll down, you have the different bracketing modes. You have auto exposure bracketing. It actually takes 3 shots, and you can select up to plus or minus 1. You also have ISO bracketing, and that goes up to, again, a full stop difference. You also have film simulation bracketing as well as dynamic range bracketing. Let's go through each one. So auto exposure bracketing, you get focus, push the button. It actually takes 3 shots, and depending on what you set, it can be under and overexposed and a proper exposure. If I push the drive button, I select ISO, it actually takes only 1 shot, and it processes the file in 3 different ways with the different ISO selection. Then you can also do film simulation bracketing, and again, it takes 1 shot and processes 3 different images. If you want to go into configure the film simulation mode, you can actually go into the menu and select the 3 different films that you want it to bracket with. Okay. Going back again to the drive mode, you also have the dynamic range bracketing, and again, this one actually takes 3 shots with different dynamic range options on that. So that's just a quick look at the auto bracketing on the X Pro1. The X Pro1 offers a multi-exposure mode that allows you to take multiple shots and combine it as one image itself. To do that, you go into the menu of the camera and you scroll down until you see the multi-exposure option. It's on page 4 of the shooting tab. And if I'm going to select and turn that on, basically the way it works is that you take 1 shot and it captures that image. It then tells you if you want to retry the shot or take the next shot. I'm going to push OK. And now it also gives me sort of an overlay of the scene. So if I want to change the scene there and take a shot with trees in the background there, as you can see, it's then going to actually merge the 2 images together. And if I like that, I push OK. And now I just did basically a quick multi-exposure on the X Pro1. There's not a whole lot of scene shooting modes on the X Pro1. Basically, it's a down-to-earth camera that allows you to adjust the aperture and shutter speeds very quickly, and makes it very simple for photographers just to concentrate on composing the photos versus actually playing around with any special shooting modes. In order to shoot in the program auto mode on this camera, if you want to do a complete automatic mode, you can set the shutter speed dial to A and the aperture dial on the actual lens barrel itself to A. And basically whatever you shoot becomes sort of like a program automatic mode. It adjusts both aperture and shutter speeds. When you pull the aperture controls off of the lens from A to any of these other dials here, and it actually moves in 1/3 stops, this allows you to control the aperture priority mode. So the shutter speed is adjusted accordingly based on your aperture settings. So if I want to create an autofocus background, maybe I can shoot a very wide open f1.4 on my 35mm equivalent lens here. And of course, if I want to get everything in focus, maybe from the foreground and background, I can shoot at maybe at f16 to take that shot, and the camera automatically adjusts the shutter speeds accordingly for the exposure. If you put the aperture controls back to A and now push the unlock button on the dial and rotate it away from A, you now have the ability to do shutter priority. And again, you select the shutter speed, whether it's a time exposure, a bulb exposure, or even 1/15th, 1/6th of a second. The camera's going to automatically adjust the apertures accordingly to the exposure that the camera picks up on. And of course, if you take both the A's off the lens and as well off the shutter dial, you now have basically full manual control. You can use the exposure dial here on the left hand side to tell you whether you're underexposed or overexposed. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to leave the apertures at f1.4. I can look at a little meter here and it tells me that it's actually, this scene is going to be overexposed by approximately 1 stop. If I rotate the shutter speeds even slower, it'll make it washed out. So if I take a picture here, you see the picture is actually washed out. If I adjust the shutter speed so it's faster and keep rotating it until it gets to maybe -2, you'll notice now that the image is actually underexposed, of course. So any photographer is going to understand how this exposure system works. You can always use the histogram as well as this little, I guess, light meter to tell you what the proper exposure would be. So for this instance here, in this particular scene, it looks like to be 1/125th of a second would give me a somewhat proper exposure of the scene. So that's just a quick look at the manual controls on the Fujifilm X Pro1. Now the X Pro1 also has a macro mode on the camera. If you're in a situation where you're too close to the subject like this and you can't get a focus on the camera, you can enable the macro functionality on this camera by pushing the macro button, and the camera should be able to try to obtain a macro focus right there, as you can see. And it actually helps to get you a closer shot, so it changes the minimum focus distance on the lens itself. That's just a quick look at the macro function on the X Pro1. The X Pro1 offers full HD video recording, 1080p of course, at approximately 29 minutes per clip. You can control obviously the aperture because of the aperture dial, and that can be set prior to you shooting. You can't control the shutter speeds, unfortunately, and the ISO sensitivity of the camera. It does automatically change that. In shooting the HD mode, you basically push the drive button, and that brings up the menu options for the different drive modes, including the movie mode. So you can push OK for that, and now you can actually do the video recording. Autofocus is available during the video. Generally, I prefer using the manual focus option on the camera, where you can actually just switch it there, and now you basically control the focus during the video using the manual focus. Again, you can still use the AEL, AFL button to quickly pre-focus. You push the shutter button to start the recording, and of course, with manual focus, you can always adjust the focusing during the video there. As you can see, you can pull focus, which is great. To start the recording, you push the shutter button. Now, in addition to just shooting in color, if you push the menu OK button, you can change it to shoot in different simulation modes in terms of the film. There's Velvia, Astia. There's even the ability to shoot in black and white in different options. So if you want to shoot the movie in black and white, you could as well. In addition to that, you can adjust the white balance for the video, as well as the video mode itself. You don't necessarily have to shoot a full HD video at 24 frames a second. You can shoot the 720p or 1280 24 frames per second video if you wanted to do that. So that's just a quick look at the movie mode on the X Pro1. The camera has the ability to shoot in different autofocus modes. You basically have a single autofocus, a continuous autofocus, and of course a manual focus. I'm just going to talk quickly about the single autofocus feature. As you notice, there's a little focus point here. You can move this focus point when you're using the LCD screens to, or the EVF screen, to 49 different points by pushing the AF button. You can now use a directional pad and move the points up, down, left, right to any situation, any points you want on the screen. You then push the AF button to get out of that again. Now, if you wanted to reduce the size of that focus point, you can use the command dial and rotate it left or right to increase the size or to decrease the size. If you want to completely reset everything, you can push the command dial button inwards. It will reset it to the default size. And if you push the menu OK button, it brings it right down to the center of the focus. Now, if you select manual focus on this camera here, Of course, the box can't be adjusted. You can use the button in the middle here to zoom in on and magnify the screen, and then use the manual focus adjustment on the front of the camera to determine what the focus point is. The fastest way to do the focusing, of course, is to basically use the instant AEL, AFL button to quickly get an instant focus first. There we go. And then you can actually push that button and then fine tune the focus you want if you want to make it a little quicker, as you can see right there. So that's basically how the focusing works and the autofocus points. Now, of course, if you're using the OVF on this camera, if I can show you that here. In the single autofocus mode, that is, okay, if I can switch that on for you, you'll have actually less points. And if I'm going to push that button for you to see, it's quite maybe a little difficult. See if I can adjust that focus for you there. As you can see right there, you have those focus points within the OVF as well, but instead of having 49 points, you actually have less points to control. Obviously, the accuracy of the OVF is not as good as if you're using the EVF and or the LCD screen on the X Pro1. That was just a quick look at all the cool features found on the X Pro1. Don't forget again to subscribe to the Fujiguys, as well as follow me on Twitter. Until then, I'm Billy, one of the Fujiguys.